this lecture, we are going to talk about the bind method. Okay, so let's get into it. So, as we have seen already in the previous lectures, uh, in the call method and the apply method, we can manually set this keyword of the function, right? And in call and apply method, what happens is if you set this keyword, the call and apply methods immediately call those functions, right? But this is not the case with the bind. So what bind does, it manually sets this keyword, but it returns a new function to which that this keyword is bound to whatever we have passed into it. Okay, so this keyword will be set to whatever object or whatever thing we have passed into it, and you will get a new function instead of it calling that function immediately. Okay, and what I mean by that, let me show you quickly. So for that, we need to use the previous example. I'll quickly uncomment this. Okay, so let's say in this example, in this scenario, we are going to use this JS every time. Okay, or Angular also we can use. Let's go with JS. Okay, so now we have to no, let's go with the Angular because here we don't have this register function. Okay, yeah. So now let's say we have to use this Angular function every time. So how we can use it with the bind method? Okay, yeah. So here we have to call this register, or I think we have stored it somewhere. Yeah, we have stored it here. So we will use this one directly. Register dot bind, and then we want to call Angular, right? So we will set this keyword to Angular. Okay, so now let me show you what will happen if you use the bind method, and here we have set this keyword, right, to point to Angular. So if we log this, then as you can see in the console, let me refresh it quickly. Okay, so as you can see, we are getting a whole function here, right? So it is not calling this register user immediately, it is returning a new function to which that this keyword is bound to Angular object. Okay, so as you can see, we are getting name and everything in the text whatever we have. Let me expand this. Yeah, okay, so it is taking us here, right? So it is returning a new function. Now what we have to do to make use of this bind is we have to store this into some variable. Okay, so let's remove it from here, and then let's say we want to register the users for Angular course every time. Register for Angular, and then we use the bind method with this keyword set to Angular. Then how we are going to use it? Now we can use this variable as a regular function, as a normal function. We just simply need to pass the arguments which we usually used to pass in the register function. Okay, so in the register function we have to pass the register ID and the name, right? So those are the arguments which we can pass right now. So let's say some random number, and then this time Vijay wants to register for the Angular course, and as you can see in the console we are getting Vijay has registered for the Angular course with the registration ID, some registration ID, right? And what is the benefit of using bind is you don't have to set the this keyword every time the way we used to do it in the call method, as you can see. So let's say here you want to register for the 5 6 users, right? So every time you have to set the this keyword, and then this call method will call this register user right away. Okay, but this is not the case with the bind method. Here you will set that this keyword once, you set it on stone, and then you'll just use that variable as a normal function with the arguments. Okay, and of course we are not limited to just setting that this keyword on stone. Okay, so let's say let's take an example where few users want to register for the same registration id. Of course that does not make any sense, but for sake of this example we can do that. Okay, so what we can do, instead of limiting it to this, we can register for the same user id, right? Angular, let's say an 645. Okay, so let's say this is our registration id. So for that what we need to do is we have to cut this from here, or actually let's just not cut it from here. We will pass the list of the arguments whatever we want to set in install. Okay, so after passing those arguments, all we need to do is we just need to call the function with the remaining arguments. Okay, what I mean by that, we just need to call this function with the name of the user. Let's say uh, Raj, and then I want to join, let's say Vishal, and then I want to join Mike. Okay, so this way I can register multiple users just by passing their name, and all these users will get registered for the same id. Okay, with an645. Now if you see the Angular object, I think Angular only we are using, right? So let's use this. Okay, now if you see the Angular object, you will get 5 registrations where the last 3 records, where the last 3 users are registered for the same registration id. Okay, because what we have done here, we have set the arguments in stone. That means we don't have to use those arguments anymore. We just have to pass the rest of the arguments which were required to call this particular function, this particular method. Okay, so here this one we have set in stone, this one we are using. And what you can do, let's say you want to register Vijay for this course every time, then you can hard code his name as well. Okay, and of course this is not what you would do in the real life, but for the sake of this example we can do anything, right? So then what we have to do is we just have to call this function without any arguments in it. Okay, because we have already set everything on stone. And by the way, the thing which we have done here is called partial application. So what partial application means? It means we are setting the parts of the arguments of a original function already. Okay, and then we are passing the rest of the arguments which were required to call that function. So here setting we are setting the parts of the arguments of the function, and then with the remaining arguments we are calling the function. Okay, so this is called partial application. Okay, so now there can be a use case where you have to interact with the DOM, right? You have to interact with the DOM along with your object. So how we can do that? So let's say you want a button here on in which like you have to click on that button, and then you want to increase some sort of count in a particular object. How we can do that? So let's see an example of that. Okay, so let's say in this Angular, let's use this one. So let's say by default in this Angular we have uh, um, around 400 seats. Okay, we'll set it to 400, and then since you got the funding, you want to increase the seats of the Angular class. Okay, seats, and then here we will write a function, and then here what we have to do, this dot seats plus plus, and then we will see the final result, total seats available are, and then we can pass the seats. Okay, and let's log the this keyword before this one as well, the this keyword value, so you can see clearly what is going on in the console log. Okay, yeah, so for this we obviously need a button in the DOM, so let's quickly go ahead and create a button here simply, and for that I'll use the button, let's say add seats. Okay, so now you can see we have a button here. Let's add some ID, add. Okay, so we will use this ID. Now we are going to use this ID, right? Let's close this, we don't need this anymore. So for this what we have to do, we have to use document dot query selector, and then here we have to pass the hash since we are using the ID, and then add event listener, and here we have to pass click event, right? And then here what we have to do, we have to pass the method which we are going to use to increase the seats every time. Okay, yeah, so now what should happen, like when we click on this button, the seats should get increased in the Angular, right? Now let me show you what will happen if we click on this right now. Okay, so before this I think we have to comment few logs here, we are getting so many logs. Okay, so now if I click on this button, so I think you guys might have noticed what just happened. So the this keyword is set to the element, the HTML element right now, right? So now it takes us back to the one of the theory lectures where I have explained you, like in the case of DOM events, that this keyword will be set to the HTML element wherever you are calling that particular method, that function, right? So right now the caller of this function is this HTML element, right, which we have created just now, right? So that is why this keyword inside this function is pointing to this particular HTML element, and that is why we are getting that in the console log for this keyword's value. Okay, and that is why the seats available here are NaN, because we don't have any such key in the DOM element. Okay, so now here we have to think like how we can call the increase seats on Angular. For this, we have a solution like we have to set the this keyword manually back to this Angular object, right? We have to tell this function like you have to increase the seats in the Angular object. Okay, how we can do that? Can we use the call method or can we use the bind method? So if you remember, we don't have to call the function right away, right? We just want to set the this keyword of that function. If we use the call method, then it will call this angular dot increase seats right away, right? So this is not what we want. What we want is we want it to return a new function which can be called whenever a click event happens. Okay, so for that, what we can do, we can just use bind. Okay, so this is also one of the use cases of the bind method. Here we have to tell this increase seats to point to angular object now. Okay, so now and yeah guys, let me show you one more thing. See, we have seen this from past few lectures, like whatever I was writing here, it was increasing and then I have to scroll here and there to show you all the code, right? But how you can fix it? To fix this in VS Code, we have a nice option. For that, what you need to do is, you just need to go into the settings and then in settings, you will find something called word wrap, and this word wrap you have to set to bounded. So with this bounded, what will happen, it will split your code into the multiple lines based on the view width of your screen. Okay, so let's say my VS code is uh, having half of the screen right now, so your code will be adjusted according to your screen. So as you can see, it got adjusted automatically, okay, into the new line. So let's say if I want to write a new string, a nice huge string, if I write here, then automatically it will get split to new line. Okay, you don't have to press enter every time to write it into the next line. Okay, so this is one of the settings which you can do in your VS code. It really helps. Okay, yeah, so let's get back to our example. So this is how we can use um, the bind method to basically set the this keyword back to the object. Okay, yeah. So now let me show you another example of the partial application, since it is we have another use case which is also one of the important thing. Let me write it down. Okay, so let's say you are running a restaurant or anything, or you are buying something. Okay, there you have to write a code where on every bill you have to add some sort of tax. How you can do that? With the help of your code. Okay, so let's say um, you have to write a function, let's say add tax. Okay, this is a function which accepts some sort of rate or percentages, and then total bill. Yeah, and then it returns let's say total bill plus percentages into, I think we have to wrap it in the string, then only it will work. Yeah, so this is what we have to do. We have to return something like let's say you have a bill of 100, then it should return with some percentage added into that. Okay, so let's say I want to add some percentage of 20%, 25%, so 0.25 I'll do. I'll add for the percentage, and then the total bill is of 100. So the expected amount will be, I think, 125. Okay, so let's log it here. Yeah, so now the amount is 125. Okay, so now in the partial application in this example, what I am trying to tell you, like in some of the use cases, you have to use the bind method, but you don't care about the this keyword. Means every time if you see here, we are setting the this keyword to any object or anything, right? But as you can see here, we are not using the this keyword at all, right, inside of the function. So we don't need that this keyword, but still you want to use the bind method in it to make it a partial application. Okay, so how you can do that, how you can achieve that with the help of bind method, let me show you that. Okay, so let's say you want to add the percentages of you want to add the tax of 25% every time on the bill, whatever you have to pay. Okay, so for that, let's create a variable add VAT 25. Okay, now here what we will do, we will use add tax dot bind, and then here for the this keyword we will pass null. Okay, because we really don't care about the this keyword right now, because it is not even used anywhere. Okay, then the second argument we will pass to the one which we want to set on stone. So this one we will pick, and this one we will set here. And please make sure you whatever you want to set on stone is on the first place, because sequence does matter here. You can't set the second argument if you are not passing the first one. Okay, to set it on stone. So make sure whatever you want to set on stone is the first one after the one which you are going to pass dynamically. Okay, so now this add VAT 25 you can call with literally any amount. Okay, and let's, instead of logging it, let's say we have to return, oh, instead of returning it, let's log it. Okay, yeah, so now we don't have to console log it every time, it will take care of that thing. Okay, so yeah, so in this add VAT 25, let's pass 200. So the 25% of 200 will be obviously 50. So we are getting 250 here. Okay, let's move it upwards, and then let's pass some other value. Let's say 300, and then it's 375. Let's pass 400. So it's 4. It's 500. Okay. So now our function is working just fine. So this is also another use case of the partial application. Obviously you guys will ask, like why don't set this as a default parameter here, like this 0.25, why I'm bothering with the bind, and I'm overcomplicating the things. So the answer is, if you set it to the default value to 0.25, then you will be using the actual function, right? But right now, if you use the bind method, it will return a new function, right? So in this case, this add function will act as a generic function which is used to implement a new function which you can use based on your requirement. Okay, so that is why we have chosen bind method, because it is similar to writing it like this. Let me show you real quick. See here, we have set it this on a stone, right? So it is similar to writing it like we have already said. Okay, percentage we don't need at all here now. Total bill plus 0.25, and then multiplied by total bill. So it will be stored something like this. Okay, let me comment this. Yeah, so this is how it will get stored. That means you are calling a new function where you have already set some values. Okay, you are not calling that original function anymore. Okay, so that is why in some of the use cases you have to use this bind method along with some values already set on stone, right? So now guys, I have a little challenge for you. It might be a little tricky for you in beginning, but you just give a try. If you don't succeed in that challenge as well, then that's not an issue because it is a little tricky. So what I want you guys to do is, I want you guys to achieve this partial application thing, whatever we have did here, without using the bind method. Okay, you don't have to use a bind method, but still you have to create a partial application. So how you can do that? So just pause the video right here and give it a try. And if you can't make it, then don't worry. We are going to write the solution together. Okay? You can pause the video here and then you can give a try. Okay. So I think you guys have made it. And if not, then that's not an issue at all. So let's write the solution together. So how we can achieve the partial application without using the bind method? Okay, so let's write the same function without bind method. So for that, let's use the analogy of add tags to. Okay, here we will set it to function where we will pass percentage, and then we will return a new function. Okay, and I hope you guys remember it from the previous lecture what I am doing here right now. Okay, so now inside of this function, what I'm going to do, I'm going to simply log these values. Okay, so this function we can pass the 0.25, or let's use 0.2, means 20% as the tax value. Okay, so let's create a variable add tax 20, and then there you go, you already have your partial application in place. Okay, so if I call this add tax 20 with the total bill amount, let's say 100. Okay, now as you can see we are getting 120. Okay, and why it is working? Because we have created a function which is returning a function. Okay, that means in this add tax 2, if you pass the percentage, then this is going to return a function, right? So now this add tax 20 is nothing but a function which accepts the parameter which is total bill, and it returns nothing, means it simply logs whatever we are passing into it. Okay, so it is something like we are storing this as a function. Okay, we are calling this function. Okay, let me actually comment this out here for you guys. Yeah, for your reference. Okay, so yeah guys, these are all the use cases. Obviously there are many other use cases, but we will explore them later in the course. Okay, so now finally I think you guys are ready for the first challenge of this section. So right in the next step you have the first challenge of this section. So best of luck guys, and see you there.